Good afternoon and welcome to Week 6 of the high school football season. We are here at Westerville Central to preview the Warhawks' big game against Olentangy Liberty. I'm Dave Purpura, along with Jarrod Ulrey, and our coach to begin the show, our guest to begin the show, also our coach to begin the show, is Coach Brent Morrison. Good afternoon.
Thanks for coming out, guys. Really.
Past couple have been a dominating 5-0. What's been so special about this start to get off to such a resounding 5-0 start so far?
This group of kids, they just have put in the work and put in the effort that we required, and they've just all risen up. And I think we have a great mix of athletic talent, and then we got a bunch of selfless individuals that are just willing to go out there and put in the work. And I'll tell you, we just have a ton of fun around here. I mean, we just love playing football. We love playing for each other, and it shows up on Friday nights.
Yes, you guys were you were a playoff team last year. But it seems like you've maybe taken a really big noticeable step this year. I mean, at least on paper you have. What are some of the reasons for that?
Our mentality's kind of changed a little bit around here. We talk about things that we can control, and the past is something we celebrate. We have honorary captains, we have alumni, we have all kinds of people from the past come around. But we tell these guys, you can't control the past. Like, for instance, we don't have a very good record against Liberty. That's not something we can control, right? But it's something that we can build on. We have to live in the moment, and we have to execute every game, every play. And, last year I think some of our players kind of looked past some things, and maybe some of our coaches did too. And, we just refocused this year, and, our guys are just getting after it. And every single play, we play like it's our last.
It seemed like you got a really special player in Ricky Hyatt.
Yeah, and Ricky, I mean, he does a little bit of everything for us. He had a passing touchdown, he punts for us, he's a tailback for us, catches touchdown passes, plays free safety, does a whole bunch of stuff. But if you go down our roster, I mean, we got all kinds of guys that are doing all kinds of stuff for us. So he's not the only one, and I think if he was over here, the first thing he would say is he owes it to everyone on this team that kind of sets him up for that success.
You mentioned Liberty a minute ago, and we are going to get to that game in a second. And that kind of highlights what a good league the OCC Buckeye has been so far. You're off to the start. Liberty is. Westerville South is. I mean, after this game, you've got some rivalry games. This is probably as good as this league has been in a while.
Yeah. I mean, the OCC Buckeye, you guys threw out a stat. I think the Westerville had only won one game since the formation of the Buckeye League against Olentangy. Yeah. It's a crazy stat, and I think this is one of those years where it's very, very competitive, and I think every week is going to be a dogfight, and I think it's just a testament to what we're doing in Westerville and Olentangy, and I'm actually kind of sad that this is the last year for the Buckeye, or this version of the Buckeye. I mean, we have some, you mentioned rivalry games. I mean, all the games that we play in this league, I mean, we know the guys on the teams, we know the staffs, and it's a very short bus ride, and I mean, every week we get excited to go play football. So we kind of got to restart that when we go into the next division, and we're definitely going to miss the opportunity to play these teams that are right here, our neighbors.
You got two 5-0 teams this week coming up. Westerville Central, Olentangy Liberty. Thoughts about the matchup?
It's funny because you look at the teams. I think we are very, very different teams in like how we approach games. And Liberty will tell you they're gonna play their brand of football, and they're gonna kind of take what you give them, and let us make mistakes and stuff like that. And that's just how they've operated, and they've had a lot of success with it. And I think our team's a little bit different in that we're a very attacking style of team, and we go after people on offense, on defense, on special teams. I mean, we try to get the ball back as fast as we can, and we try to score as fast as we can. So it'll be very contrasting views of play, I think, and we've both found success on our end of the spectrum, and it'll be kind of interesting to watch those two things collide.
All right, we will let you get back to preparation, Coach. We so much appreciate you coming up here.
All right, thank you so much, guys.
Warhawks coach Brent Morrison joining us here, and like I said, we were here 2 years ago when his predecessor John Magistro was coaching. So they're earning the attention that they get this year. They've had 5 games, 5 winning clocks so far. I don't know. It might have been on the radio show or somebody else's joke. I wonder if there's a stat about that somewhere as to how many running clock games you have consecutively or to start a season or whatever. But they're a juggernaut right now.
It's very impressive. There's no question about it. Liberty's 5-0. They have had to go through a lot of adversity here the last few weeks, changing quarterbacks because it looks like Corbin Parrish is gone for the season, and they have a young guy, Jackson Roberts, filling in. He did a pretty good job last week.
He did.
You look at his numbers.
A lot of poise. He started 12 out of 13 and throwing for about 140 yards and 3 touchdowns. I mean, they plugged guys into their system and they played very well.
And you think back to 3 years ago when Mitchell Oakley, I guess 4 years ago, when Mitchell Oakley was a sophomore, and they put him in when they had some, they were trying to figure out what they were going to do about Brendan White back then when they still had him, and they put Mitchell Oakley in at quarterback, and they did just fine. And he was a young kid back then. Kind of reminds me of that a little bit.
Going to be a big one. 5-0 Olentangy Liberty, 5-0 Westerville Central right here on Friday night. Several other key games. We enter league play for pretty much everybody at this point, although there will be a couple non-league games scattered, I think, probably per week the rest of the season. One of them is a rivalry that you know very well, and that would be 4-1 Watterson at 4-1. I don't know why I wrote 1-1. 4-1 DeSales. DeSales is coming in, having won 3 in a row overall. Watterson won last year to break a 5-year slide in the series. You've seen this rivalry for a couple decades now. What are some of the things that stand out to you?
I missed the last couple of them, sadly, but I believe I'll be at that game Friday. I'm hoping. So it just has a great feel to it whenever you go there. It's you can just feel the crowd's a little bit more hyped for it. The players are a little bit more excited for the matchup. It's really special. I'm kind of excited because it means something this year. It's more than just, last year. DeSales kind of was hanging on to some playoff hopes when they played in Week 10, but they had a lot of injuries at that time, and they weren't able to get it done. And, both teams ended up 5-5. I mean, it's one of the rare times that both teams don't make the playoffs last year. Extremely rare. And I think you're going to see two teams here that know how much is on the line. Obviously. Watterson is in a situation where they've got to go something like 8-2 maybe to be able to make the playoffs. Some of the teams they've beaten are not winning football games. So, and yes, they did beat Marion Local, but that's only a Division 7 team, so that's not going to get them quite as many points. Yeah. And DeSales is in a situation where they're playing really well right now. That Kettering-Alder win, I think, was an eye-opener for everybody, and they've just built on that last week.
And we will see what happens. Watterson was state-ranked as well before that loss to Dayton Chaminade-Julienne last week. Another league opener is in the OCC capital. New Albany and Canal Winchester. The Indians have won 14 consecutive games, 5-0 overall. They haven't lost at home since the last weekend of September 2 years ago, when they happened to lose to the New Albany Eagles at 23-3. New Albany comes in at 3-2. You mentioned about Watterson's playoff hopes a minute ago. New Albany is in Region 3 in Division 1. 3-2 right now. They're 10th in the region right now. They might have to win out to make the playoffs. They could go 7-3 and make it, but it's going to be a tall task for them. But this is going to be a really good opener Friday.
The fact that New Albany's in a league that has a lot more Division 2 teams, that doesn't help them. So, yeah, every time if they can go out and they can beat a team like Canal, and then Canal's going to probably do really well the rest of the season. They're looking at something like 8-2, 9-1 again.
Oh, anyway,
so,
yeah.
For sure. One thing that impresses me about both these teams is how well they both run the ball. They both got. I opened up the dispatch today and saw the area leaders, and actually most of these games we're talking about today, guys that are like at the very top of that. We got Stephen Bird from, is it Stephen or
Stefan Bird.
Stefan Bird from Canal, got 13 touchdowns, and then of course Hall from New Albany, 956 yards rushing.
Doing a story on New Albany's run game for next week's paper. I actually wrote that story this morning. Fun story to do. They've got a real good run-two punch with with Reed Hall and Michi McCauley. And you look at Canal, Stefan Bird. Tyler Toledo is a versatile slot back who can do anything: run the ball, catch the ball, returns punts. He's been a big threat for them. Jack Beeler has thrown for about 700 yards so far this year. He's a good quarterback. Both of these teams are very comfortable in the system that they like to run.
Yeah.
So, we head over to the OCC Ohio. Reynoldsburg and Pickerington North, and this game has taken on an extra layer of intrigue now. Reynoldsburg-Pickerington's always a rivalry between those two communities, and you've got the Raiders coming in at 5-0. Now you've got North coming in at 2-3, coming off a win over Dublin-Kaufman on Friday. They catapulted themselves all the way up to 6th in Region 3, largely on the strength of what they were able to do and the fact that they beat Olentangy Orange earlier. But yeah, this game means a little bit less or more than we thought it would a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, it looks huge all of a sudden. And you've got two teams that are playing with a lot of confidence. Reynoldsburg 2 weeks ago had this. I mean, they did get they're 5-0, and they got a win 2 weeks ago for Central Crossing, but they were not very happy with the way they played that game. They came out with a much more focused effort against Westerville South, and they're coming into this. They know what over the years some of the great games they've had with Pick North. Last year, I believe it was 33-31. They were able to win that game. And Pick North is feeling their confidence back. I mean, that was exactly what they needed last week.
It was, and to go up and 29-27 was the final score, and getting that kind of victory. I mean, now you've got some momentum under your belt, especially going in to a league where, I mean, it's not going to be easy for anybody.
And Pickerington North has figured out. They've started to figure out some things offensively with what they really want to do. Now that they've handed the quarterback reins to Jack Sawyer, and obviously they've got Chris Scott, who is a phenomenal receiver. I believe he's leading the Central Ohio in receptions with 34.
That's correct.
So, yeah, it's an exciting offense, and this should be. Yeah, ought to be quite a matchup Friday.
A few other games we want to touch on, and maybe the 5 minutes roughly we have left. Starting in the OCC Buckeye, 3-2 Olentangy coming off a big win of its own at New Albany last week. They scored the final 17 points to beat the Eagles 38-35 on a field goal by Hayden Alcott as time expired. They're going to face a South team at 4-1 that you saw last Friday night and had a tough time. Not only was it their first loss, they lost their quarterback, we think, for the season, correct, with a collarbone. And Michael Mansoray, who's been so good for them during the first half of the year, he left that game injured.
Well, yeah, and that was the Mansoray injury happened happened early in the fourth quarter on a tackle, and we're not really sure. I mean, I don't think they really know for sure. At least last week when I talked to him, they weren't really sure, but he was optimistic that it could be something that maybe in a few days he'd be okay. So, but yes, they do have a young quarterback in there, and I know, but by the end of the game, I had one of the Reynoldsburg players tell me they were pretty impressed with his poise out there.
Okay.
So, and then Olentangy, they play these exciting games. I mean, think about all the games they've had the last couple of years where they're scoring 30, 35 points.
Absolutely, and this was a confidence boost for them. I talked to Coach Solis for a story I did on their passing game that's going to run this week. Said, hey, you know what? We go in 3-2. We've got all our goals in front of us, and that's exactly where they are at this point. A couple 4-1 teams in the CCL. St. Charles at Hartley. And I mean, St. Charles, we've talked about them a couple times so far. They're off to such a nice start. What a signature win it would be for their program if they could pull this off on Friday.
I was thinking the word measuring stick would be a really accurate thing for them if St. Charles could somehow, because right now it still would be an upset.
Oh yeah,
I mean, the way that Hartley has dominated this rivalry the past few years, and Hartley is probably not going to be very happy when they step on the field. They don't lose very often,
no. And
the tendency for a team like a Hartley or Pickerington Central last week when they were coming off the loss to Groveport, they go out and they really controlled things against Hilliard Davidson. These teams that don't lose a lot, they tend to come back with a really focused effort the next week. Hartley
lost to another state power in Massey last week. Nonetheless, not like they're going to care who they lost to. I mean, when they get on the field. Big matchup in the OCC Central to begin things, and it doubles as an interesting matchup where Region 2 is concerned. Marysville is 4-1. They go down US 33 to play Dublin Kaufman, which is 4-1. Of course, we mentioned earlier that they lost to Pick North. That right now is the 5-4 matchup in Region 2. Kaufman hasn't lost to Marysville since they went into this current alignment of the league. What are some of the things that jump out to you about the Shamrocks and the Monarchs on Friday?
Can Marysville get to this next level? I mean, I think all along I've kind of felt like Marysville could be a team to watch, especially after they went out. They dominated Delaware a few weeks ago when I was able to go see them play. They can run the ball really well. And I felt like their schedule was pretty navigable for a few weeks if they could get into OCC Central play, and I still kind of feel the same way. I mean, this is a playoff game for Marysville, and it is for Kaufman too. But I think Kaufman's going to have one of these. They're going to be the same kind of thing, a bounce back type of game for them.
That's probably how they view it. I mean, they're going into games after that against, I think, Central Crossing and then Hilliard Davidson, I want to say, in a couple of weeks. So yeah, I mean, it's a big stretch of the schedule coming up for them, too. City League North, 4-1 Centennial. They have not lost since that 1-point setback on opening night at Grandview Heights. And they take on a Beechcroft team that is seeking its third straight win, comes in at 3-2.
If you get a chance, check out some of the comments from Coach Gooseby in our story this week, written by Michael Rich. They're pretty noteworthy in terms of, he talked about, have we ever beaten Beechcroft? Never. I mean, they've never been in this situation before where they've had a chance to knock off. I mean, because I think it's very legitimate to think that this could be Centennial's year if they can get this kind of a win this week.
I mean, that's going to help them propel the rest of the season. And, I mean, there's no shame in losing to that Grandview team. That was a good test for them to open the season, and we'll see what they can do the rest of the way.
Beechcroft is playing better.
Yes, they
and
are.
I think that because of the history between them, that it's going to be very challenging for Centennial. Maybe on paper they look like they're a little bit better, maybe a little bit more experienced, because especially if they do get Jalen Gilbert back. He hasn't played since week 1, but there's some indications that he could be back this week, and if he's not, they can still run the ball really well, and they've got a lot of experience around them. So can they overcome the mental barrier when it comes to Beechcroft? Because Beechcroft means so much to City League North football.
And they have, for many years, sort of. I mean, going back to that era, even when Brookhaven was around, that was a great rivalry, too. A few other games to mention before we get out of here. Thursday, Reedy at Columbus Academy. Both of these, Reedy comes in at 3-2. Academy is 2-3. Grandview Heights at Harvest Prep. That's a 4-1, 4-1 game in the MSL Ohio. Olentangy Berlin and Hilliard Darby, both 3-2 in the OCC Cardinal Division. And Groveport, coming off a loss at Liberty, they take on Franklin Heights. Those 4 games, what are some things that you notice?
Well, I'm fascinated to see the Grandview Harvest Prep game after Grandview kind of got it taken to them last week by Whitehall. I mean, 60-13.
That margin turned a lot.
I don't think that really made a lot of sense to a lot of people. So, really interesting to see, can they bounce back? And Harvest Prep is a very good team.
And Berlin and Darby, this is Darby is always in that race in the OCC Cardinal. Berlin coming off a big comeback win over Worthington Kilbourne last week. You mentioned the phrase measuring stick earlier. I'm sure this kind of thing applies for them too.
Absolutely. Can they cross that barrier? We all thought that they would be better this year, and it appears they have been.
All right, and we will keep an eye on all of this. Next week, a quick programming note, as it were. We will be with you on Wednesday, we will be covering district golf on Tuesday, so we will be with you a week from tomorrow. Site to be determined, and we will let you know that via social media. For Jarrod, Ulrey, and for Warhawks coach Brent Morrison, I'm Dave Purpura. So long, everybody.